open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
All right, welcome to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush. Got a great show today. You know, there's a lot going on in the U.S. with and in Kentucky, for that matter, because I think this impacts our state as well. Is you've got this rise of the Democrat socialist, you know, in the Democratic Party. It's like it's funny because the Democrats historically have kind of ebbed and flowed between this lurch to the left, and they never seem to learn their lesson, you know, because this happens, gosh, every so often. It happened in the FDR administration. You know, they got really crazy about communism, you know, and you had to have the McCarthy era to kind of rid the government of all the communists. And then you have the radical '60s generation and the McGoverns, you know, taking everything left wing in the '60s, and then the Democrats learned, you know, well, maybe we now shouldn't be so liberal. Let's get Bill Clinton in there, be more moderate, and now we're back to hey, let's bring in the socialist, you know. And so they never seem to learn. So the pattern typically is, you know, you get this, cultural moment where there's a lot of convulsion in society, and then you get a lot of these Democrat socialists, you know, or communists. Let's just say the communists. You know, they call themselves progressives, democratic. So they're all just communists. It's all just Marxism, and so they get themselves all worked up and say, hey, we've got the solutions. Ignore the fact that communism hasn't worked or socialism doesn't work anywhere for the past 100 years, and ignore the 100 million bodies that are piled up over there that we had to go through to kind of test it out. We're going to do it better. You know, we're more noble of a human being, and so we're going to do it better than Mao or Pol Pot or Stalin or I don't know, Castro, Daniel Ortega, you know, people in this hemisphere, you know, Chavez, and those guys. So it's just a big, cycle, and but it's not a rational thing too, and that's something we need to talk through as well. The appeal to these far left ideologies, if it's purely just a empirical, rational thing, you could just read a book and go, okay, well, economically that doesn't work. You know, command and control economies don't work. Taking freedom away from people and, limiting their liberties to excel it doesn't allow for a flourishing economy. And, even objective communists, right, have figured that out. Go to China. China threw away that rule book economically. They said, okay, well, this doesn't work. We tried Maoism. We tried the Cultural Revolution. We tried all that. And, maybe we ought to just do a little more free market. And boom, China blows up, and it's like the biggest, now it's our rival, So economically, they figured it out. And same with like Vietnam, so supposedly communist countries. So, but no, here in America, we've got these, the rise of these Democrat socialists on the far left. And it's fascinating because even the Democrats, even traditional liberal American Democrats, are starting to get weirded out by it. We're going to play some clips here shortly of Fetterman. And, of course, if you've seen any of the comments from Bill Maher lately, Bill basically said, hey, I'm out. If you guys are going to go commie, I'm out, And so So that's kind of what happens historically with this trend. You get the traditional, I used to say white blue collar Democrats because there used to be such a thing. There aren't anymore. All the white blue collar people are now Republicans, but it used to be, you had traditional loyal Americans that were Democrats that were like, we just want a little more government, and we still love America, and we still love the way things operate, and these commies are crazy. So usually those will win out, but I don't know, folks. We're in a real difficult moment here, and we're going to talk about Mamdani, New York, and I want to hear your thoughts too. 5710970. Where are we going with this? We'll be right back.
Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, and we're going to show you a clip of what they used to preach about communism and socialism back in the day. Because like I say that this has been a recurring theme in American politics, because it has been. I mean, ever since Marxism and communism became popular, this has been a thing. If you want to see an interesting movie on this topic, there's a movie called Reds. Thanks, Mr. Producer. He said, get the mic closer. Get on the mic. So there's a movie called Reds in the 80s with Nicholson and some other folks, and that was a great little insight into that sort of coastal elite, upper class drive towards communism. It was really attractive, And then the movie recently, Oppenheimer, right? You watch that; it's all about this communism that was going on in the 20s and 30s. That was very trendy, and it was just all the cool kids, all the intellectuals. They were caught up with that idea, and they didn't call themselves communists. They call themselves progressives, right? So they'll never come back and call themselves a commie. Communism, interesting enough, he actually was a communist party in the U.S., and the term card-carrying communist actually came from the fact that if you were a communist, that meant you were part of the Communist Party, and they actually gave you a card, and you actually were a card-carrying communist. And so it's got a real that's the real history there. But anyway, I've got this clip here. I'm going to cue it up real fast, but it's this is an anti-communist cartoon that was done back in 1948, and I thought it was just very apropos, and we're going to see how they describe communism.
Given us in only 160 years. Before signing up, you boys ought to try a little taste of Dr. Ism's formula to see what you'd get in exchange for your freedom. Go ahead. Try it.
You can't do this to me! I'll strike!
The state forbids strikes.
Wait till the union hears about this!
Ah, yes, the union. Welcome to our ranks, number 1313.
I'll take this case to the Supreme Court.
The state is the Supreme Court. Our decision is as follows. No more private property. No more you.
And the farm voted for
a stop to this.
Farmers don't vote anymore.
What'll they do for seed next year?
You won't have to worry about next year. The state will do your planning from now on.
We must fight to regain our freedom, or everything is lost. Everything.
Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
When anybody preaches disunity, tries to pit one of us against the other through class warfare, race hatred, or religious intolerance, you know that person seeks to rob us of our freedom and destroy our very lives.
And we know what to do about it.
And now, gentlemen, no violence, please. And don't throw those bottles. Don't throw those bottles. No! Oh, no! No!
Well, there we go. We knew what to do about it back in the early or late 40s, because after World War II, we saw, Stalin and the communist East just started rolling up all these countries and putting in the Iron Curtain, and suddenly everybody they woke up to this communism stuff. What is this going on? All the cool kids used to say this is the future and utopia and all this stuff, and now they're like building concentration camps and locking up people and just the gulags and all this. And so, anyway, I say all that in the sense that this is new. This is not new. This is a pattern that repeats over American history. We swing, the left just lurches back towards this, and like I said, it's not logical, because if you just look at it empirically and just you can say, okay, we've tried this so many times, it doesn't work. Why is it still attractive? And so, well, one reason it's still attractive is maybe it's been rebranded, right? And that's something that a lot of people are trying to understand, because the young people in America are being drawn to this for many reasons. It could be that it's just they've redefined what socialism and communism is, or maybe they're going through some stuff that where the current economy and the current culture has failed them, right? And I think there's some truth to that, because if what they see now as the economy we have now, if that's what we call capitalism and free market economics, then there have been some failures there, primarily because of a lot of government intervention into the economy and that sort of thing, and manipulation, and a lot of elite capture of monopolies and stuff. But that stuff has really impacted young people. And so, for example, if you're 25 years old, good luck trying to buy a new house, right? I bought my first house in 1997. I was 25, 26 years old. A little starter home in Fern Creek. I paid, I don't know, it was under $100,000 for it. It was, that same house is probably, it's like $250 now. And you say, well, that's 20 years, Tom. Well, yeah, 20 years, but everybody knows housing has shot up, and a lot of it's because not that inflation has caused it. It's not because houses are worth that much more. It's just the dollar's worth that much less. And so you've seen all this disruption with inflation. The affordability is an issue, and a lot of young kids have gone to college. They were told this myth that you go to college and that's your key to success. And so we pushed that myth over the past 40 years. So you got a lot of kids that have useless degrees. They're just they got the basket weaving or the lesbian dance theory degree, and they get out. They go, well, hire me. I've got this degree that says I'm supposed to be special, and they find out that all they can do is be a barista. And then they go like, well, this economy really doesn't work. I think I'm going to go socialist. I think I'm going to go commie, so I can at least have some power over the system and try to enrich myself. So that's an issue. And also you get the just like I said, the rebranding of socialism. It's a lot of people think socialism, and they think of the Nordic countries. They think of like Europe, like, oh, Scandinavian healthcare. That's what socialism is. I don't know. I just want to have free healthcare and yada yada. And if you really look at the Scandinavian countries, they're actually more free market than America in a lot of ways. They have very high taxes, and to cover these huge safety nets. But their economy, their actually tax code is actually less progressive than ours, and so it's a pretty flat tax code. The rich get about the same tax percentage as the middle class and the poor, and so because they have to, because that's where the money is. The money is in the middle class and the poor taxing. You can't tax the rich enough to fund a socialized medical system that they have in Scandinavia. So anyway, so that's kind of a myth. It's a rebranding. So, but I say all this, and the result of this is we have a rise of the Mamdani candidate and this third world, Muslim Marxist candidate in New York, and who's taken over and in New York, and he's, I'm going to play some clips here in a second, but he was out there yesterday wanting to lock up Bibi Netanyahu. I mean, first of all, the mayor of New York. What do you have to say about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? Just shut up, But no, he wants to grandstand and say, if he comes to New York, we're going to lock you up. And so, two thoughts to that: import the third world, you import third world problems, right? So if you bring in people from all over the world that have all these tribal and ethnic conflicts and ethnic hatreds, you're just going to bring those ethnic hatreds here. And so the rest of the world, and we do too in America, we think this way on some level, but the rest of the world really does think tribally. Their politics is more about the tribe rather than ideals, rather than some high view of democracy or whatever. It's all about, it's our group. We got to get what's good for our group and our family, because they live a little bit more hand to mouth over there. So the more primitive way of looking at politics is just, hey, can we survive? Well, if we're going to survive as a group and a family and a tribe. And so our tribe has to win, and we're going to dominate the other tribe. And so the rest of the world thinks that way. And so you bring it here, and it takes a long time for them to unpack that and kind of get out of that habit. And so there's a great there's a pundit I follow. His name is Aaron McIntyre. He has a great phrase about this. He says we have all these new Americans, quote unquote Americans, that have been brought into the country. I think 15% of the people in the U.S. right now were not born here, right? He calls them paperwork Americans. They're Americans legally, right? But they're paperwork Americans. And so are they really American? And I argue they're not. Okay, if Mamdani, I don't think is really a true American. All right, now I'll just say that again. I don't think the mayor of New York, Mamdani, is a true American, because he doesn't believe and espouse and in his heart support the pure ideals of what America is about. He's promoting this, first of all, two things: leftist Marxism junk, which we spent 100 years fighting, right? And we actually have laws that say if you're a communist, you can't even immigrate here. And so that's one. And but plus, he's an Islamist, and going after Israel and all this stuff. And so, we've said on this show 100 times, there's a problem with Islam integrating with the West, especially American values. They don't mix. It's oil and water, and it's going to cause problems. So paperwork Americans are not Americans. We'll be right back.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I want to hear your thoughts on this. We're just riffing off just a soliloquy. Is that a word? It's I guess a monologue about the rise of the Democratic Socialists of America and how is it a threat? Is it a real threat? Yes, it's a real threat. You get enough young people that are blinded by this propaganda who, first of all, have never been taught about the ills of communism. Right? They've never been taught about what a gulag is. Go ask the average college graduate, what's a gulag? You ever heard of that? And they're like, well, nobody. You ever heard of Solzhenitsyn? You ever heard of the Gulag Archipelago, the famous dissident Cold War book on that whole system? And if you don't know what a gulag is, it's basically the prisons that the Soviets put their dissidents in, and you just live there in the middle of Siberia, and you just basically died out in the prison. Just horrible conditions. Because if you were against the state, if you were against communism, you didn't fall in line, they just put you in prison. It's just a concentration camp, and that's what authoritarian systems like communism and it does. So we have the rise of this stuff. The kids have not been taught this stuff. There's no education on the history of the Cold War. It's just like this whole from 1945 to 1989. There's nothing discussed, in our kids' history classes, civics or social studies about what happened. If it is, it's all about the ills of America and how the civil rights movement was the greatest thing ever, and America was so evil and all this stuff. And that has a complex history. If you want to know the truth, the civil rights movement was pretty much pushed along by a lot of left-wing communists. And so, Martin Luther King, you may love him or hate him, his mentor, his primary speechwriter, was a card-carrying communist. That's what he was, and they saw the civil rights movement as another way to undermine American moral authority and all this. Not that there wasn't issues in America. I mean, obviously, the apartheid system of segregation in the South was what needed to be dealt with, but there were a lot of disagreements even within the black community on how to do that, and King was a little bit more of the I think the Marxist radical. Let's go take to the streets and protest and I don't want to argue that merits of that, but bottom line is our kids have not been taught the truth of international communism and socialism and what it means and how it works. So that's another issue. So there we go. So what's interesting, we've got a lot of Democrats that are starting to wake up to this, and there's an article here. I'm going to try to pull it up. But in Detroit, there's another Mondami-like character running, and he is basically a Muslim. And of course, Detroit, Michigan, that area is known for a lot of Muslim immigration. You ever heard of Dearborn, Michigan? It's like you're dropping yourself in the Middle East. Basically, it's like majority Muslim, calls to prayer everywhere. It's like you're not in America. It's a colony of the Middle East you see these processions of Shiite Muslims walking down the street during their holidays, beating themselves and all this kind of goofiness, burqas everywhere. Caveat, not to say that all Muslims are evil people and they're trying to take over your country and want ill will of you. I'm not saying that. But Islam as a culture is bad and does want to take over your country because the logical outgrowth of Islamic worldview is to combine the political system and the religious system and to change the society to Sharia law. And that's just if you believe Islam, if you want to be a good Muslim, that's what it tells you to do, And so a good Muslim becomes Muhammad, A good Christian becomes like Jesus, Big difference. And so, America would have never come from a Muslim background. So, but yeah, so the Democrats in Detroit, see if I can pull this article up. The Democrats in Detroit are actually now going, well, maybe we shouldn't support this new candidate. And see if I can get this article up. Maybe we shouldn't support this guy because that's a problem. That's a problem to have a Muslim. And so, matter of fact, you're seeing a lot of black Democrats in Detroit, and I'll see if I can pull this clip up. They're saying that, hey, we don't even see black people at your rallies. It's just Detroit, and you're running for mayor, and Mr. Mondami Jr., and I'm trying to pull this up real quick. And we're not seeing you. So what is happening? And so a lot of the black Democrats are not supporting him. And then a lot of the Jewish Democrats are saying, no, thank you. We're going to support the Republican. So you actually have a lot of major Jewish donors in Detroit that would normally support a Democrat, because you have a Muslim running for mayor saying, okay, no, I think we're going to stop supporting the Democrats this time around. We're going to support the Republicans. So that's fascinating to see within the Democratic Party. There is this, hopefully, an awareness now that this far left is dangerous even to the average Democrat. And so, hopefully that plays out in a positive way for us all. But so that's happening. Sorry, I can't get this article up because my computer is slow. I need a new computer. If you want to donate to Kentucky's Voice right now and buy me a new computer, that'd be great. I wouldn't have this lockup problem every weekend. So, anyway, so there we go. So we're dealing with that. Also, John Fetterman. And if I can pull up that clip, hopefully, John Fetterman is actually coming after Mondami. And if you know John Fetterman, and he's a senator in Pennsylvania. And interesting guy, Democrat, and everybody thought, people didn't really know what he was about. He was kind of this mysterious Democrat. We all thought he was left wing. Then he got in there and he kind of had a little bit of sense. It's like, well, I'm not going to go along with some of this crazy stuff that the left is pushing. And he's actually very pro-Israel. And he said and he actually made this quote. And if I can pull this article up, it would be great to play. So he's basically saying that I will leave the Democratic Party if it turns anti-Israel. Now, I know a lot of people listening here are conservatives that are on the anti-Israel train as well, so that may not, rub you. You're like, oh, okay, I don't like him. Now I really don't like him. But that's interesting, that because you do have a lot of pro-Israel, primarily Jewish donors to the party that are like, well, we're not real crazy about these Mondami types and this Democratic Socialist types that want to blame Israel. So Fetterman actually said that, there's a reason why you want to lock up Mondami, because you're, let me paraphrase basically, because he's locking up terrorists that you support. That was quote unquote. And fascinating that, here a Democrat calling another Democrat a supporter of terrorism. So there we go. So we have to have that playing out. I want to try to pull that up because I'd love to share that with you. But so that's going on. But also want to hear your thoughts on this. I can riff on anti-communist stuff all day long because we need to, and it's really happening, and these young people are really intrigued by it, and we need to figure out what to do. And I'm curious, what do you think we should do as people on the right? Should we just sit back and let the Democrats fight it out and implode? I mean, that's one strategy. That's one. I say, hey, go on over. What do they say? Don't interfere when your enemy is destroying itself or something like that. Don't get involved. I'm paraphrasing that, but there is an idea that, okay, well, great, they're just going to eat themselves alive. Let them do it. Or should we get out there and really remind people of the ills of communism and the ills of this democratic socialist stuff? And encourage young people to understand the reality of the economy. The economy has been so progressive, has been so socialist in its nature in a lot of ways, that's why it's not working as well as it could. Right? All this government money that's been pumped into the economy over the past 5 or 6 years, that's government money that's caused inflation. That's government policy that's caused inflation, not from just the free market itself. This socializing of the bailout that happened in 2008, all these banks that were about to implode, and we basically borrowed money from the government to bail them out. We socialized the risk, and so we've artificially impacted the markets to benefit the elites, and so that's not a free market. So the kids have a point, but we don't want communism. We'll be right back.
to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. We are talking socialism, the rise of democratic socialism in America. And listen, this impacts Kentucky. And you know why? Booker, Charles Booker, who's running for Senate to replace McConnell in the next term, he has a lot of those sympathies. You know, he's kind of one of those, I don't know his pure pedigree from a political ideology standpoint, but there's a lot of accusations that, hey, he's kind of lining up with that democratic socialist, framework. And so that impacts us. We've got a Metro councilman, and I forgot his name, but he's kind of pushing that line. So it's here. It's going to be everywhere, because that's the energy on the left, is that ideology, is that stuff. And it's kind of like Islam. It's the same thing. The energy in Islam are people that really believe in the pure form of Islam. That's why you see all the terrorists and the Hamas's, the Hezbollahs, the Shiites in Iran. Those are the people that the Al Qaeda's, the ISIS. Those are the people that have the dynamism and the energy within that community, because they're actually following out what the Quran says, and so they have the moral authority to actually act. And say and confronts those that within their communities, says, hey, chill out, don't do that. So no, turn around, look. Muhammad said, do this. This is what we do. We go conquer our enemies. We capture their women, and we convert them by the sword. And if you're not a true Muslim, you don't believe this. And so on the left, you got the same thing. If you're going to be a true leftist and you want big government, you go back to the Quran of the left, which is Karl Marx's, Das Kapital. This is a. So let's just go. Let's go. If we're going to be left wing, let's go full socialist, so full communist. And so that's where the dynamism is, especially when the young people are confused about the truth of history and how that stuff works. And so, but I alluded to something earlier, that there's a reason why, beyond just the empirical analysis of socialism and communism. There's something beyond that. There's something spiritual that's going on, and with that movement, both the Islamic movement and of course the left-wing movement. When you have a country and you have a culture that, especially in the West, that moves away from its Judeo-Christian roots, and I know people, when I say Judeo-Christian, some people just Judeo, this is all Christian. Jews, the Jews, and just chill. It's just that stuff is really boring. So just get over it. So to the Judeo-Christian West, okay, you've got when you pull away from that, you pull away from the roots and the sort of the transcendent nature of reality, and there's a God, and he wants you to have freedom, and you're supposed to be self-regulating, self-governing. You have to have a religious people in order to have a moral people, and without a religious and moral people, you cannot have freedom. And so when you don't have all those things, there's a vacuum that's left, and so people, if they're not self-regulated, they will cheat, they will lie, you will get monopolies, you will get people that want to screw everybody over and take over and just become a robber baron, and so the left goes, aha, see, look at these evil people, they're just out for themselves, or greedy, and so the left appeals. And plus, when you don't have a spiritual sort of life, you need some sort of alternative spiritual. So you need a pseudo-religion, right? The left is a pseudo-religion. At the end of the day, it has its belief systems. It's very utopian in its mindset. We can create heaven on earth if we just change the economic system and put this elite group that's super smart and so moral and so righteous in charge. Then they can make the decisions for everyone, and everybody's equal, and we'll have utopia on earth, and it's heaven on earth, and we've heard that before. The Bible talks about that. It's like they were trying to build the Tower of Babel, basically. And God doesn't like that, and because it doesn't work, because mankind has fallen. We have this fallen nature. So you put just a small group of people that have fallen natures with ultimate power over everything in the society. First of all, it just doesn't work practically, because they can't make enough decisions at the granular level to make your life better. So they can't figure out what you're going to eat that day. They don't have that bandwidth. and plus they're corrupt as well, because they're human beings. And so our founders understood that. Our founders understood, listen, we're all corrupt. We're all fallen creatures. And so we need a system of freedom and checks and balances. And that's the best form of government we can come up with. And, but it requires a good moral people and a religious people and a Christian people. It just does, and if we get away from that, guess what we're going to have? We're going to get communism. We're going to get some sort of socialist system or some sort of state authoritarian power, some sort of power on high. That's going to run things, because if you can't govern yourself, you're going to get governed by somebody else, bottom line. And Islam is also an option, right? And so you don't have a religion? Well, we'll give you one. We got a great religion, and it's awesome. All you men, we get to suppress the women. We get to put them in garbage bags, and they just got to stay at home, and they're going to be they're going to be submissive and all this stuff. So it appeals to this sort of that certain side of men that want to just dominate the women, and so there's, I don't know, sometimes there's a point there because all this feminist crap that we're dealing with right now in America, you sometimes look at the Muslims and go, well, they got some things right, but not all of it, because I don't know, whatever. That's another time. I'll get in trouble on that one, but I don't care. Whatever. We got a problem with feminism, and it's really destroying the country, and we're not having enough kids, and part of it's because of feminists, and you ladies know that, and quit trying to be men. So there we go. So we got Islam, and so Islam and leftism, one is a religion, one's a pseudo religion, and so if you lose your religion, you gotta move somewhere. You're not going to have everybody has a religion. I mean, there's no thing as not having an existential worldview about something because you got to have meaning in life to kind of survive, just to wake up every day. What's the point of waking up if I don't have some sort of hope and meaning? And so so the left creates this pseudo-religious, utopian framework. Also creates this saints and sinners dynamic of the proletariat and the elites and the bourgeois or if you're woke, it's the oppressed minority versus the majority white Christian male. So you get this saints and sinners dynamic where you're on this crusade, and so it really gives you something that in your heart of hearts you need. We're all created to be part of this great story of humanity, which is a spiritual story of good and evil, and the fall of Satan and Christ redeeming us and all this. You may not be a Christian, but at the end of the day, every great story in the world is that story. All right, you look at Superman, you look at all the superhero, it's all the story of Christ. So it's written into our hearts, it's written into our heads, whether we like it or not. It's just the truth. And the ultimate truth is that. And so when you line up with that truth, guess what? You flourish personally and your society flourishes. But we get away from that, guess what? We're going to get communism and we're going to get Islam. And so bottom line, that's it. That's where we're at. And so I want to hear your thoughts. I'm trying to pull up the text line here so we can see if we have any thoughts here. What do you think about Fetterman? He's like, I'm leaving the Democrats, so I'll go against Israel. And not that Israel's perfect, right? Israel is it's a group of people just like any other group of people, and they're fallible, and so they can make mistakes. But at the end of the day, wanting just to stay alive is kind of noble. Just leave us alone. They're trying to kill us, and if you keep trying to kill us, we're going to try to kill you. And that's all. That's the story of Israel. That's it. This little country the size of New Jersey just trying to survive, and the rest of the Middle East, who have kicked out all their Jews, by the way. People talk about, oh, you occupied this land, da, 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 da. There were Jews there already, all right? Yeah, more Jews came in after the war. We get that. There was a conflict there, but there were Jews there already, and historically was a Jewish homeland. And then the UN tried to adjudicate that, gave the Arabs their side, the Jews their side. The Arabs didn't like it. They tried to kill off all the Jews. The Jews said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to stay alive, and we're going to fight you. And they win. And guess what? All the Arabs kicked all their Jews, all the Arabs and the Persians and everybody. They all kicked it. Well, I don't think the Iranians did necessarily, but all the Arab countries kicked out all their Jews. So there was many Jews that were kicked out of Arab countries as more than Palestinians were displaced by the 1948 war. So it's just whatever. There's a moral cause there that could be more out. Let me get to your text here. And so there seems like there's a couple of types of anti-Israel. One type doesn't want to support or send money. The other type thinks they are the problem and they're evil. So that's a very good point. Yeah, there are two different types of skeptics here of Israel. One is just like, I don't want to support foreign countries. We need to take care of ourselves, and so there's that, and I can sympathize with that, and at the same time, America has interest, right? I think, excuse me, we do have an interest to try to have allies throughout the world, and so then you want to help support your allies, and if your allies are under attack, you want to help them out, and so. And Israel has been historically an ally, at least since the, since the 70s, and or I guess 60s, because they used to be a little more pro-commie or pro-socialist. The Soviets kind of thought they were a little bit on their side until things changed. But anyway, so I get that we need to be not so giving our money away to the world, because we don't have an end supply of it. But then there are other people that just hate the Jews. It's all about the Jews, and there's, I'll go there. Let's look at Candace Owens. Let's look at some of these people that have been offended by, I think, some Jewish personalities in their life, and they just have this chip on their shoulder. And then you get into the whole dark side of the web of, anti-Semitism. It's just, these conspiracy theories, and, it's just weird. It's just weird. Okay, there's that. Let me see. Let's see. They're talking about the communism. It's happening again because our education system has not done its job telling the history of the country and how good we really are. 100%. The story of America is one of the most noble stories in history, and people do not. They just don't understand that there's just the moral arc that this country has taken from this founding to where the left wants to create their own moral arc of America is just inherently evil because it has this original sin of slavery and da-da-da-da. Well, every country had slavery at that point. What's moral about America is we got rid of it, right? That's what's unique about it. So we actually corrected the problem. So we have a self-correcting mechanism in our system, both politically, the system's created to do that, but also we've got a culture that stems from a Judeo-Christian, Protestant world. Not to knock Catholics here, but I mean, it is. Let's face it, America was a Protestant country, a Judeo-Christian, waspy Protestant, culture that had a worldview that could self-correct, and so, and we would do that, and we still are doing that, and we're still trying to do that, and hopefully we can get through this period, this 250-year period that. If you ever read the great John Glubb that talks about empires, they all destroy themselves in 250 years. Maybe we can get through that because we're hopefully a good country. We'll be right back.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host today, Tom Fallbush, is riffing on the Democratic Socialists because we need to be aware of this. This is a growing trend. We actually have like real communists winning office and are now running our major cities. I have a friend of mine. I was doing a Zoom call with him the other day, just business, acquaintance, and he lives in Long Island. And I said, "What is going on with that area? What about Mondami?" And he's like, "Oh, we all hate him. We all hate him." And so it seems like what's happened in that area, and it's happening around the country, is the core urban areas like New York, Manhattan, would be the core area, and then, of course, Long Island, sort of the suburbs. The core of that area is being populated by, traditional minority groups that always vote left, specifically blacks. Then you've got a lot of immigrant classes. A lot of them are voting left because whatever, they just feel like that's in their interest, and so you end up with a Mondami-like character, especially a lot of Muslim immigration. They all vote for the Muslim, right? They're very tribal, and so that's that's going to happen everywhere. So as our cores of our cities start emptying out because of all this immigration colonizing the core of our cities and going into the low-income housing and sort of pushing the Native-born Americans out. You get the cores that are going to be these little communist dots, and then you're going to have these exurbs and suburbs that are more conservative, more traditional American. So like I said, my friend in Long Island is like, yeah, we're all kind of like, we hate them. We don't know what's going on, but none of us live there anymore. We all live in Long Island, and we go to work there. And he actually said that. He goes, we go to work there in my office downtown. It used to be a pretty nice area. You'd walk around and cafes and stuff, but now it's like seedy. It's kind of like there's homeless and it's kind of weird. I just want to work from home remotely, and it's like, I don't blame you, man. And so who knows? But New York can survive. They'll come back. But here's the thing, Louisville. Let's talk about us real quick. I can talk big picture, but let's talk about home here, bread and butter. We do have a very unique opportunity here. Louisville has this opportunity where we can have a Metro Council that could be conservative, that could be more right of center, and we are about 3 seats away from doing that. And Mr. Producer, I can't see the screen out here, but if you can pull up these candidates. We have a list of candidates on the screen, and I would read their names, but I can't see them out here. We got a problem with our monitor. But if you're watching, know that there are races for Metro Council, and we are going to try to get them elected. If we can flip the Metro Council. We will be one of the few urban areas in America where we have a conservative Metro Council. We could still have a Democrat mayor. We're probably going to have Greenberg for another term, but at least he's moderate on some levels. So we could, and let me tell you one of the secrets of why this is happening in Louisville. It plays into what I've talked about this whole hour. We have a population that has been moving into this city that gets it. They get the problem with the left because they're Cubans and they lived it. They know communism. They know socialism. You can't pull the wool over their eyes. They've learned the lesson. They went to school. They've learned the realities of it, the harshness of it, because they lived it. And so the Cubans in Louisville, because I think outside of Miami, we have the second largest Cuban population. Well, look at Miami. Let's just go to Miami for South Florida is conservative. They have Republican mayors. Why is that? It's Cubans, right? So thanks to the Cubans, we might have a chance to have a Republican or a conservative, more right of center municipality, at least on a Metro Council level. So if we can get the Cubans rallied, which they generally are, they're motivated. You show them the right vote, they'll vote. They'll show up because no more socialismo for them. We did that. No more Castro for them. So we got that, and then we just need to get enough Americans, non-paperwork Americans, real Americans, to show up and vote for these folks. And the margins of winning these elections are not much. We just got to show up. We just got to get your neighbors to show up and vote for these folks. And we could get this city maybe back on track, because the crime we're like the 15th most violent city in the country. We're the 50th in the size of just population standpoint. but we're the 15th most violent. What's going on? It's because we've got our police force. This whole BLM stuff, Brown and Taylor crap. That this defunding the police. It's just there's no morale in the police force. There's no teeth in it anymore, and the criminals know that. And it's just we could change that, and we could revive this. And this is something. Listen, I'm like a fifth generation Louisvillian. I mean, my family on my dad's side has been here since the Civil War. My great grandfather was a Southern soldier who was captured and released over here in Jeffersonville, and so his wife used to call him a Tennessee refugee, and because he was from Tennessee, but we ended up in Louisville. So been in Louisville for a long time. Butchertown. My family's from Butchertown. I grew up in Oklahoma myself, and I'm Louisville. I don't want to leave this city, but there's a point where if it doesn't get any better here soon, I'm going to probably start divesting from the city because I've got property here. I've got lived here for my life, but maybe it's time to at least, go to Spencer County, go to Oldham County, do the thing that everybody does, and just forget the city, let it implode. But I don't know. I just feel like we got to stand and fight. So anyway, so the Cubans, they can save us. I wanted to switch gears real quick and talk about an event that happened this week. Rocky Atkins, he was the excuse me, something in my throat today. So Rocky Atkins, he's in Beshear's administration. He's also been a state legislator and I think the Speaker of the House at one time. He's going to run for governor. So we have a governor's race in 2027. So of course this is his last term. He's going to run for president. Chances are he'll be on the ticket. My gut says he will be vice president, if not president. All the Democrats that have any sense, they're looking at the dynamics here, and they say we just need another Bill Clinton. That's the only way we're going to get through this. And so Beshear is the nearest thing to a Bill Clinton. Problem is Beshear is not a Bill Clinton. He's pretty radical in his left wing ideals, and he's wrapped his arms around some of that far left crap, and it's hard to unpack that. So good luck with that, Governor. But I think he'll be on the ticket on some level. Because he feels your pain, When there's a tornado that comes through Kentucky, I'm going to show up in your little town and I'm just going to hug you. I'm going to hug you, make you feel so good about being in Kentucky, and we're just all coming together, And people love that. People love that kind of, feel good, show up and, put a face on it kind of stuff. And if you don't pay attention to policies and socialism and all this kind of garbage and the threats, you think, oh, he's just a nice guy. I like nice guy. I'll vote for a nice guy. Click. So anyway, so he's leaving. So we've got Atkins. Let me go through the list of other potential candidates that may be running for governor here. And so we've got let's see, on the Republican side. Let's see. Well, on the Democratic side, we got Jacqueline Coleman. She's the current lieutenant governor, so she's lieutenant governor for Beshear. So she's looking at running. Rocky Atkins, talked about him. On the Republican side, we're looking at official candidates: Rick Hardin, Charles Bruiser Martin. These are like kind of low-profile candidates, but the real people we're waiting for: Michael Adams, who's Secretary of State. He might be announcing soon. James Comer, one of our U.S. reps, congressman. So he may look at running. Somebody mentioned Thomas Massey. So I think he made a comment before the primary that if he won the primary, he might run for governor. So who knows? Massey's got a future because he's got the Massey cultists out there. I see him on X every day. They're all like doomers for Israel now, anti-Israel stuff. They're just kind of, I don't know. They really just, I don't know. That whole Massey campaign poisoned a lot of people. But he's got a future. Savannah Maddox, looking at her maybe running again. Robert Stivers, who's the Senate president. Damon Thayer, former Senate Majority Leader. There's some wild cards. Somebody thought, well, maybe Daniel Cameron runs again. I don't know. I don't know. I love Cameron. I think he probably needs to be appointed to some sort of judicial position at this point. Losing a couple of times statewide, it just, even if you're a good candidate, it's just hard to overcome the fact that you lost, and the brand suffers. And so it's probably maybe best to do something that a little more, that's maybe an appoint. I mean, really, the Trump administration ought to appoint him and put him on some appellate court somewhere. And because he's, he was Attorney General, so he understands the law, and he'd be a great Supreme Court justice one day. They ought to just put him in line for that. Okay, so there we go. So curious, who do you think would win governor? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We've got about 2.5 minutes left, but Rocky Atkins, I don't know, just another left-wing big government shill, you know. Lieutenant governor, yeah, one of those, you know, I'm a hug you, suburban, white, female, you know, Karens who want to control your life and wave the pride flag, you know. I've had enough of that crap. So we'll, but you know, I think hopefully we'll get a Republican governor. Hopefully. I don't know. Adams, Comer. I don't know. Who would you go for? I'd probably Comer in my mind. Adams seemed to be a little bit weak on the ballot initiatives, or what do you call it? Just election security. There's been a lot of critique that he just wasn't really as skeptical as he should have been about election integrity. So whatever. I'm still open to it. We'll have to get him on the show and say, okay, why do you want to win? Why do you want to run? So we'll talk to him. But yeah, so there we go. So Louisville, we could save ourselves with a Republican or conservative Metro Council. The state, if we can keep a majority and keep our majority actually doing conservative things, because that's the problem with our legislator when it gets to supermajority like it has. It just worries about its power and likes to sit there and be fat and happy and not do conservative things and not push the agenda like it needs to be. And so we got to hold their feet to the fire. Say, hey, we've given you power for a reason. Go do something with it. Don't just sit there and protect your personal fiefdom. So we need to get more MAGA candidates in there, more populist Republican candidates in there, and then get a Republican governor, and then get a conservative Metro Council. And Kentucky could maybe be a shining city on a hill in this country. We could address the immigration issues. We could maybe ban Sharia law in the state. We can start really supporting there's more the state can do to impact the immigration problem. There's no reason we should be taking entire neighborhoods in Louisville and flipping them to a whole nother culture. It's like, what is, you know, I keep talking about Buchel, you know, turning into a little, you know, Mecca, a little Saudi Arabia or something. It's just crazy. You just drive through there and it's like all these Arabic signs everywhere. It's like, really? Yeah, like, the key thing, there's 30 seconds left. If you want to know the truth of it, there's a huge Baptist church that was there back in the 80s. Now a huge mosque, right there in Buchel. That's our future. Your church is turning to mosque, and that's happening here in Louisville. So, all right, we don't want that. This is America. It needs to stay America. Okay, thanks for listening to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host, Tom Fallbush. I'll see you tomorrow.